At 53 years old, I challenged myself to take 12 trips in 12 months, and every trip has to involve a points and miles strategy. Sometimes I'm earning points, sometimes I'm burning them, and sometimes I'm doing both on the same trip. My kids are mostly grown, I'm in a new chapter, and I realized if I kept waiting for the perfect time to travel, I might never go. So trip number 1 took me to Seattle. For years, travel was something I squeezed into life whenever I could. Between raising kids, schedules, responsibilities, and everyday routines, life was full. Somewhere along the way, I also started learning about points and miles. After years of slowly figuring it out, travel started feeling possible in a completely different way. Not effortless, not free, but more accessible, more within reach. For this trip, we used the Chase Sapphire Reserve benefits and stayed somewhere a little nicer than we normally might. Points, miles, and travel perks don't always just mean flying first class around the world. Sometimes it's just upgrading the experience a little. Seattle ended up being the perfect mix of everything we love: coffee shops, airplanes, engineering history, incredible food, and little pockets of weirdness. Oddly enough, Seattle already held a special place in my life. The last time I'd been there was in 1998 when my sister and I came to celebrate my college graduation. At the time, it felt like my first real big girl trip. The beginning of adulthood, the beginning of independence. So returning all these years later, at the beginning of an entirely new chapter of life, felt strangely full circle. Of course, we did the classic tourist things. We went to the top of the Space Needle, which somehow still manages to feel futuristic and retro at the exact same time. Right next door was the Chihuly exhibit, which honestly ended up being one of the best visits of the trip. The colors, the scale, the light reflecting through all the glass, it almost felt unreal walking through it. Shortly after we visited, parts of it were badly damaged by a vandal, so now the footage feels even more meaningful. And then there was Pike Place. We took an amazing food tour there, which turned us into buying entirely too much food and shipping half of it home like complete maniacs. That's one of my favorite parts of travel now, though. Not rushing through places trying to see everything, but slowing down enough to experience them, to taste things, to wander, to notice details, to let places surprise me a little. Part of the reason we chose Seattle as a couples trip destination is because I'm a pilot and we bought an airplane building kit a couple of years ago. The company that makes the airplane kit is headquartered nearby. So while we were there, we drove out to visit the aircraft manufacturer, we spent time at the Museum of Flight, and took a Boeing plant tour too. And honestly, that part of the trip felt very us. Not luxury travel, not overly curated. Airplanes, engineering, road trips, coffee shops, and the excitement of sharing these things together. At one point, we even drove out to see the site of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapse because Eric is an engineer. Apparently, this qualifies as vacation entertainment now. Honestly, though, I kind of love that too. We also visited the Museum of Pop Culture, which, if I'm being honest, was probably the one thing I wouldn't rush back to do again. But that's part of travel too. Sometimes things surprise you in a good way, sometimes they don't. This trip felt different though, not because Seattle was the most exotic place I've ever been, but because it felt like the beginning of a new chapter of life. A chapter where my kids are older, where life has a little more space in it, where I can start saying yes to more of the things I've always wanted to do. There wasn't one huge dramatic moment, just quiet realizations that life could still expand, that I was still curious, that there were still places I wanted to see and experiences I wanted to have. And honestly, that's what this entire 12 trips in 12 months challenge has become about. Not escaping life, but stepping fully back into it. Seattle was only trip number 1, but looking back now, it feels like the place where a brand new adventure quietly began.